All right, so let's get started. So the group policy tutorial for beginners, what we're going to do first, I'm just going to go through like 4 slides. I know PowerPoint slides is like, you can have death by PowerPoint. I do my best to avoid them at all costs, but sometimes it's a good idea to just give you guys a slight overview. So group policy is a tool that's included with Windows Server. And let me make sure you guys can all see my screen. All right, we're good there. It's a tool that's included with Windows Server domain controller. So when you install the Active Directory or ADDS server role, it's going to install a bunch of tools that are related to group policy, like Active Directory users and computers, sites and services. One of the tools is group policy. You can also install group policy using what's called the server administration, remote server administration toolset. That's just a console that you can install on any computer, whether it's a domain controller or not, and you just connect to your domain controllers remotely. So you wouldn't install that on a domain controller. Might want to throw that out there. You generally install it on a member server or maybe a Windows 10 computer, and then you connect to your domain controller, and then you can access group policy and make changes and things like that. So group policy allows administration of domain users and computers. You can do things like create file shares, you can create printers, and manage your Active Directory domains. Really, it's a really good thing for you to understand Active Directory users and computers before you try to move into group policy. Because I don't know how you use well, you could use Active Directory without getting into group policy, but it's really hard to use group policy without having to have some basic understanding of Active Directory. So if you're not on server, if you're on Server Academy, we have an Active Directory module, and that comes before the group policy module. So make sure that you guys go through that first. If you're on YouTube or you're not a member, then we have that free training that I was showing you guys earlier about Active Directory. That's going to help you out a lot when it comes to administrating group policy. Okay, cool. All right, so I want to give you guys a basic example. So here on the left-hand side, we have, or on the right-hand side rather, we have the domain root. And this could be any domain that you have. And then we have 2 organizational units. An organizational unit you can think of as kind of like a folder, and it contains Active Directory objects. But in Active Directory, they're called organizational units. They're not called folders. So here we have 2 OUs. One, by the way, OU is organizational unit. We have the domain users OU or organizational unit, and we have domain computers OU organizational unit. And inside that, you can see these little icons. They're supposed to represent computers or users. Now, this is all theory. This isn't what Active Directory looks like. We're going to get into the console, and you'll understand that more in a second. But I just want to give you guys a little bit of theory. So we can create a GPO and link it to either these organizational units, or we can link it to the root of our domain. So if we link it to the root of the domain, it's going to affect everything that falls within the domain. So domain users, it would apply to them, and it would apply to domain computers. Now we can also link these group policy objects or GPOs to a specific organizational unit so that it only affects that OU and all OUs under it. So if we link a GPO to a domain computers OU, then it's only going to affect the computers inside of that OU. Same thing goes for domain users. We link it to the OU for just users. It's only going to affect those users. Now, a GPO is a group policy object, and that contains configuration settings for either computers or user accounts in your domain. So you can do things like install software, which is one of the things we're going to do today. You can also configure a desktop background with a group policy object. You can configure things like password security policies. So you can say that they have to have at least a 10-character password or 14-character password, and you can set the complexity requirements. You can tell computers through a group policy object that they have to install security updates every Sunday night at 12 p.m. You can do things like that. So it gives you a lot of control over your domain, and you use group policy objects to create the settings, and then you link those group policy objects where you want those settings to be applied. All right. So kind of like what we just talked about and what's inside of a GPO, we got computer configuration. Now these settings only apply to computer accounts. Okay. That's important. Then we have user configuration. This only applies to user accounts, and this is all within the same GPO. You'll see more about this in a second. Yeah, so I'm just going to check the comments really quick. Herms, what's up, buddy? Herms is one of my guys. And let's see, Cass Smith is saying our instructor had us install VirtualBox and then download Server 2019, set up a domain, and then go download Windows 7, 10, Linux VMs, and join them to the domain. That's awesome. That's really good. Yeah, so that's kind of similar to what we do at Server Academy. We show how to do it through VirtualBox, and we're bringing Hyper-V. It's actually in editing right now. But we also provide these online IT labs. So same kind of deal. Yeah, it's just setting up your own domain is like, it's so important for you guys to do that. So if we create a GPO, and all this is to say, you have user and computer configuration. All that is to say, if you link a GPO to the root of your domain and you only configure computer settings, it's only going to affect the domain computers that are underneath your domain. Okay. Same thing goes if you only configure user settings and you link that GPO to the root, it's not going to affect the computers because there's no computer settings in this GPO. Okay. It's only going to affect the users. All right. So like I said, I don't like to spend too much time on PowerPoint. So I'm going to close that and I'm going to switch over here to the lab. I'm just going to move this into full screen mode. And if you guys also have the lab up, what we're going to do is log into the domain controller and we're going to take a look at the group policy console. So I'm just making sure all the video is still working for everybody. Somebody's asking, what's the difference between computer accounts and a user account? Computer account is an object in Active Directory that represents a computer account. It stores the computer account's password. You manage where it's located inside of Active Directory. And the user account is exactly the same thing. It represents a physical user object inside of Active Directory. So if you create a user account for somebody who just started working at your office, you would create the user account, give them the domain memberships they need, and assign their password, right? And they're represented by the Active Directory user account object. But again, that kind of goes into the Active Directory training that we did last time. So you'll definitely want to check that out if you're having those kinds of questions, which are really good questions. So I'm going to hit Control-Delete here and log into my domain controller. Now, the cool thing about these labs is the username and password is stored here on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to type that in and hit go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just log into my Windows 10 workstation. So I'll select my workstation here. I'll hit Control-Delete, and I'm going to log into that one as well. So I'll type in the password or just click on the password. It types it for me, and I'll click go. So then I'm going to switch back up to the domain controller and let this log in. Someone's saying they downloaded VirtualBox in Windows Server 2016, but they're having an error. That could be a corrupted download of Windows Server 2016. I see that happen a lot. So maybe try giving it another download. Yeah, that's correct. Cass is saying once you join a client to the domain, then you're logging into accounts managed by the domain. So the admin can set up the policies for said accounts. This is exactly right. And that's what we're going to be learning in this webinar or this free training. Yeah, so joining Linux is not as simple as joining a Windows computer. You have to, well, last time I did it, I used Realm, but there's also like AD-Info. I'm not the sharpest on that, but I just did it a few weeks ago. I think I used Realm to join it to the Active Directory domain, but that's something I should write up. I should do some documentation to write that up. Okay, so now that we're logged into our Active Directory domain controller, we know it's a domain controller because we see the ADDS server roles installed here on the left-hand side. If I click on local server, I can see the computer name is SADC, which is short for domain controller. And I can see my static IP address, all that good stuff. What we're going to do is select Tools, and we're going to go down here and select Group Policy Management. Now I'm going to expand this. And I'm going to drag this over so I can see what's going on the left side. So my forest is serveracademy.local. We're not going to break down the difference between domains and forests and sites. We're going to work strictly with domains, but I do have videos of that on YouTube and also have lessons on Server Academy that go a little bit more into detail on that. We're going to expand our domain serveracademy.local, and this is where all of our user accounts, computer accounts, and group policy objects reside. So here I can see that this is an organization unit, Server Academy. I have domain controllers, and then I have a set of OUs beneath that. Then here I can expand this little Dropbox or folder, you might call it. And this contains all of my group policy objects. Here I have WMI filters, which I haven't created any of these, but these are filters that you can link to a GPO to kind of make sure that they get applied to the computers that you want. It's a little bit more in depth, but generally you don't have to mess with these too much. Then we have started GPOs. Next, we have group policy modeling and group policy results. This lets you troubleshoot group policy. So if you want to figure out what a policy would be for a specific user on a specific computer with a specific number of security groups, you could do that with the group policy modeling. And group policy results will actually run in RSOP, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but it tells you which actual group policy settings are being applied to the computer. So they're very useful for actually troubleshooting group policy. All right. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is start by just talking about the difference between a group policy object and a link. So here are all of our group policy objects. We have the default domain policy, and I'm going to say do not show this message again. And down here, you'll also notice we have another group policy object called default domain policy. And if we expand domain controllers, you'll see default domain controller policy, and here we'll see default domain controllers policy. And it looks like there's two. Really what's going on, there's two GPOs, these two are the GPOs, and there's two GPO links. And all GPO links is, all that means is that, hey, I want to take this group policy object and I want to apply it here in the domain. So really quick, I'm going to open Active Directory and I'm just going to show you what's actually inside of these organizational units. So if we go to domain controllers in Active Directory, I'll expand my domain here. We have domain controllers, and over here we have domain controllers. Inside of that domain controller, I have SADC01. That's my primary domain controller that I'm currently logged into. And this is a GPO that's being applied to this organizational unit that's applying all the settings for my domain controller. It's things like that prevent regular domain users from logging into a domain controller, in a bunch of different security settings that are specific to domain controllers. Now, we have the default domain policy, which is linked to serveracademy.local. It's linked up here at the top, and that affects everything inside of the domain. So all of the organizational units, rather, which there's two of them, domain computers and server academy. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a GPO to install some software on our Windows 10 workstation. So this computer right here, we're going to install, I think it is Notepad++. So right now, if I click start and I scroll around, we don't have Notepad+ installed. So we're going to fix that, and we're going to do that at the domain controller level. And the reason why you might want to do this is, in this lab, we have one Windows 10 workstation, but in the real world, you might have 100 workstations or 500 or 1,000, and you can't log into all those and install the application on each one. It would take forever. And then every time there's an update, you'd have to log in and run that update, and it's just endless amounts of work. So we can create one GPO and tell it to, hey, I want you to install this program, and you link it to the OU where the computer sits, and it will install for you automatically, so you don't have to do anything. Oh, someone's asking, can you fit the window? Yeah, let me do that. I'm going to change the resolution. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to change the resolution here. Advanced, let's try 1600 by 900. I don't know if this makes it better or not. Can you guys tell me if that's better? All right, on YouTube, if it's too small, let me know. I'm getting a few reports that the screen is a little small. Oh, cool. So DJ is saying the Server Academy course is by a mile the most complete administration course I've ever seen. I've learned so much. Oh, cool. So you remember. Awesome, man. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I'm working really hard to try and make it better. Okay, someone's saying it's still too small, so I'm going to pull up. Let's see. I think there's a way to change. Let me see here. There's a way to change how it's zoomed in. Advanced sizing. I don't know if this will work very well, but we can try this. And they change it oh, and this is just going to be on this server, which is a real bummer. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to try and fix this, guys. Hang on a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my desktop resolution. I don't know what's going to happen to the stream. Let me stop screen sharing really quick, and I'm going to try and fix this for you guys, okay? So I'm going to go to just webcam. All right, I'm going to grab this screen resolution. If I lower the resolution on my computer, it should look better for you guys. So let me do this. All right. I'm changing around a bunch of settings. Let me go to desktop capture. Okay, I'm going to scale this up. Okay, and then over here, I'm going to change this to 1280 by 720. Okay, and then I'm going to share a screen. I got so many things going on. It's crazy, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, tell me if this looks better. Is that bigger? Does that look better? Let me know. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint slides? Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put that on the recording. But yeah, let me know if you guys... Oh, okay. Someone was saying it was good already on YouTube, but I don't know. Now it's extra good, I guess. Let me hit F11 here to go to full screen. Or actually, I'll just hit full screen. All right, we're good now? All right, that's the best I think I can do for you guys. All right. So where was I? So we were about to create a group policy object that was going to install Notepad++. Now in the lab on the E drive, we already have Notepad++ downloaded. I went ahead and did that for you. By the way, when I run live streams, I create these labs ahead of time. And I try to set up everything for you guys so that it's as easy as possible. Same thing for the courses. Everything is pre-configured. So we have Notepad++ and we have Server Academy Desktop. So if I double click on this, this should be like some kind of, yeah, this is like a desktop of Server Academy, an old logo that we actually don't use. So we're going to deploy this Notepad++. Now, before we can do that, we need to make sure that this file is accessible by our Windows 10 workstation. So we have to create a file share. So on the Windows 10 workstation, if I try to navigate to SADC01, so I'm doing / SADC01. If I press enter, what we're going to find is we only have the net logon and the sysvol shared folders. So what we need to do is create a new file share that we can access. So when we configure these group policy objects, they'll be able to access it without getting like a permissions denied or could not find the file. So I'm going to right click on the data E drive and I'm going to create a new folder and we're just going to call this share. So now I'll right click on share and I'm going to choose properties and we're going to go to the sharing tab and we'll select advanced sharing. Okay, and we're going to say share this folder and we're going to select permissions. Now what we need to do is everyone has read permissions. That's okay. You might want to change this in a real environment to authenticated users. So I'm just going to type in authenticated, hit check names, and it should pop up authenticated users. I'll hit OK. And we'll say authenticated users can read the directory. So they'll be able to access and run the installer because there's not any sensitive information inside of here. It's just Notepad++. Maybe if you had like some proprietary software in there, you wouldn't want authenticated or everyone. You might want to restrict it to a specific group, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing. The next thing I'm going to do is say domain admins, and I'm going to hit check names. And I'm going to give domain admins full control of the file share. So authenticated users can read it and domain admins can have full control over it. So I'll hit apply and I'll hit OK. I'll hit apply and OK again. And now we have this share path SADC01 / share. If I go back to my Windows 10 client and I hit F5, now I can see the share folder there. So if I open this, the folder is empty right now. Let me go back to domain controller and drag in this file. I'm going to drag in Notepad++. And now I can run and launch Notepad++. So we have the file accessible to everything in the domain. If I go over to SAMS01, I'll just go ahead and log into this. And if I type in the password and hit go, I guess I'll wait for this. You guys are probably trying to catch up anyways on the lab. But this is going to take a second. If I hit File Explorer and I do / SADC01 / I go to share, I can also access Notepad++. So it's accessible to everything on the domain as long as you're an authenticated user, which is perfect. And I could run this manually by double clicking it. We don't want to do that. We want group policy to do the work for us. That's the whole point. When you're doing automated deployments, you don't want to have to do a lot of work. You want group policy to do it for you. That way you can get back to watching cat videos and things like that. The important things, the internet. All right. So over here on the domain controller, we've done all the work to make sure that the file is accessible. So what we need to do now is create the group policy object. And we can do that by first identifying where should the group policy object go. So let's go to Active Directory and let's look under our Server Academy domain and figure out if we want to install this on SAWS01, which organizational unit should we link the group policy object. So I'm going to click on Domain Computers, and here I can see that it's under Domain Computers. So I have SAWS01 and I have SAMS01. Now, in the real world, I could probably tell you right now, you wouldn't want your Windows 10 clients and your member servers to be in the same organizational unit. That's not a good practice. But for our lab, it's probably fine. So what we're going to do is create a GPO that will link to this OU, and it will apply to all of these computer accounts. So let's right click and let's go back to group policy. And under domain computers, let's right click and let's say create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Now we can type in the name, and I'm going to call this Notepad++ install. And I'll click OK. Now if I expand this, we can see that we have a new GPO link. Remember, it's a link, it's not the object itself. And it's called Notepad++ install, and it's linked to the domain computers OU. Under the group policy objects, we now have a new one called Notepad++ install. All right. So what I'm going to do is we can right click to edit a group policy object. You can right click on the link and say edit, or you can right click on the GPO itself and say edit. Also, if I go here and I say delete, it's going to say, do you want to delete this link? And it says this is not the GPO itself. So if I say yes, it's gone, but the GPO still exists. So if we wanted to link that, we could just right click on domain computers and say list or link an existing GPO. We select the GPO that we just created and hit OK. And now that link's there. Additionally, we can right click on another GPO and say link an existing GPO, and we can link the same one again, right? So if I expand this, now we have it linked in 2 different spots, but we still only have the one GPO. Okay, hopefully that's starting to make sense for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the link here because this would not apply here. I'm going to say OK, getting rid of domain groups. And under domain controllers, we're going to right click, or I'm sorry, domain computers, we're going to right click on Notepad++ install, and we're going to say edit. Now this is where in the PowerPoint I was talking about computer settings and user settings. We're applying this GPO to a organizational unit that only contains computer accounts. So what does that tell you? Where should we configure the settings? Because there's 2 places that we can configure the software install. We can do it under computer configuration, or we can do it under user configuration. So we have 2 identical settings, one for users and one for computers. Since the OU only contains computer accounts, we need to configure this setting under the computer configuration. Okay, does that make sense? I'm gonna take a pause here for a second, grab some water. All right, I'm gonna right click here and we're gonna say new, and we're gonna say new package. Excuse me, I'm choking on my water. We're gonna say new package. And we can go to the data drive, we can go to share, and we can select Notepad++, but this presents a problem. And it tells us right away, it says cannot verify path is a network location. You have to specify the path from your network location, not a local location. Otherwise, the computers will try to access it on their E drive. It's just not going to work like we want. So what we're going to say is no, don't do that. Right click, say new package, and we're going to browse to the share. So we're going to do // SADC01, and we'll go to share. And now we can select Notepad++. So we're on the network path or network share of our server that we just created. And we'll select open. And we can just leave this as assigned. You can change it to advanced and change more options. Assigned is going to be perfectly fine for what we're trying to do, which is just get it installed. So we'll click OK. And if you're curious about that, I go into all those details inside of the group policy course. Just kind of goes beyond the time that we have for today. All right, so we can right click on this. We can say properties, and we can look at the deployment type. We can say uninstall when it falls out of the scope of management. We can change if there's upgrades, categories, and security. We don't need to mess with any of this stuff. It's just there if you need it. We can also right click, and we can remove the application by saying all tasks, and we can say remove. All right, so now we have this software which should get installed on all of our computers. So if we pop over to our Windows 10 workstation, you would kind of expect if you're new to group policy that, hey, it should be installed right now. So if we click on start, you're going to notice if we search for Notepad, it's not going to be installed yet. And all that comes up is regular Notepad, not Notepad++, which is what we want. So the deal is we need to manually, we could do 2 things. First, we can wait until the group policy refreshes. In this case, it'll actually take for the policy to refresh and the user to log off and log on. Sometimes it takes a reboot of the computer. Or we can open command prompt and we can run a command that is group policy update or GP update /force, and that will force our computer to go out to the domain controller and say, hey, I want to get all the policies and I want them right now versus instead of just waiting for when it'll do it by itself, which could be in 90 minutes. It could be in 30 minutes from now. So since we're trying to test this and we want to make sure it's going to work, let's go ahead and do it now. So I'm going to hit start and I'm going to type in CMD and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say run as administrator. It's going to ask for administrator credentials. I'm just going to type in administrator and I'm going to type in the password, which is right here on the right hand side. So it's capital P, lowercase a, $, $W0RD. And I'm going to say yes. So I'm using the domain administrator account to run this. And what I'm going to do is type in GP update /force. And by the way, that running as administrator might be a little bit overkill. That might not be necessary for what we're doing right now, but I like to do it. So in some cases, it causes problems. Like if we try to run GP result /scope, /r/scope computer or user, it's actually going to give us an error because we're running as administrator, but that's fine. Okay, so it's updating the policy. It says computer policy update has completed, and then the following warning. So it looks like, great, something's not working. Actually, it is working. It says it was unable to apply one or more settings because the change must be processed before the system startup or user logon. So it wants to know if it's okay to restart. So I'm just going to say, yes, you can go ahead and restart. So I'll press Y and I'm going to press enter. And then now it's going to reboot the computer in less than a minute. All right. We can go ahead and go over to this computer as well. And we can hit CMD. And this time I won't run it as administrator just to show that it works. So I just hit CMD and pressed enter. And I'm going to say GP update /force. And it should give us a very similar message. Yep, same message. So you have to reboot or log off and log on so it can process. So I'm just going to say, yeah, go ahead and reboot. So it's starting up. See, the cool thing about these labs also, even though you're connected through your web browser, you can do things like configure the BIOS. You can install an operating system. Like the VMs don't actually have to have connectivity to the internet for you to be able to connect to them through your web browser, which I think is pretty cool. And by the way, I've added some new labs to this list, like CentOS 7. I don't think that's not the new one. I can't remember exactly which ones now, but I just added a couple new labs last week. Of course, as soon as I go to say that, I can't remember what they are. That's how it goes, of course, I guess. But yeah, we have a bunch of cool labs in here you guys can come in and run. We have everything from Active Directory, Windows Server. We have Linux. Oh, this was it. Establishing a two-way trust. This is a new lab. And there was another one, but I don't know why I can't remember what it is right now. But yeah, you guys can come in here and work on these and practice your IT stuff. So pretty cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into full screen mode. Oops, I need to do it up here, full screen. And I'm gonna type in the password. Try exploding it. What does that mean? Okay, let me read the comments here. Oh, okay, got it. So someone's saying I'm trying to reset my password PC, but it fails to reset, and someone said try exploding it. Yeah, I don't think that's probably the best way to resolve that issue. Yeah, but I don't know what you mean by reset your PC. I'm not sure how you say your name, Emilinish. But yeah. So Herms is saying, do you run GP Force on the update of the client? Vitor is correct. You run GP update on the client because any client basically. If you're configuring settings for a domain controller, then you would run GP update on the domain controller. If you're running new settings for a client, then you go to that client and you run GP update. That tells the client that, hey, go over here to the domain controller, grab the new policies, and bring them back. That's my cool hand drawing motions. Oh yeah, so right, I can use like whiteboards on this app. This is a new live streaming app for me, but I guess it wouldn't show up on YouTube, so that won't work. All right, let's see. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and log in now. So I'm going to hit the Control Delete button, and I'm going to say password. Ziggy's asking, what type of file are we deploying? I am deploying an MSI. So if we go back to the domain controller and we take a look at the share and I go to view, let's see, file name extensions. Here we go. Notepad++ 7.7.msi. Group policy can deploy MSIs and you're not going to be deploying exes. You can package them as MSIs. It's frowned upon. It's better to use a tool like SCCM if that's what you're trying to do. But yeah, group policy, you're going to get an MSI and you're going to deploy it out that way. And also, not every MSI is really designed to be deployed through group policy. So deploying software is something you have to test, and sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error, because if the package isn't designed to be deployed through group policy, it might not work like you expect. All right, so on our workstation, we've ran group policy update, and we've restarted it. So let's see what happens. So if I hit start, right away, I can see Notepad++ has been installed on the computer. So I can launch it, and here's the software. This is like a code editing tool that I used to be a fan of before I moved on to Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which is what I won't get into that, but I love Visual Studio Code. But that is how you can deploy software with a group policy object and a GPO, and just kind of like understanding how to create file shares and making sure that file is accessible. So same thing, if I log into my member server, type in the password, and I'll click go. The prices are included. Someone's asking how much it costs to get to the labs. It's included in our membership. We have a free 7-day trial, so you could do it for 7 days for free and just cancel your membership. Or you can sign up, and if you, after the 7 days, is $37 a month. So here we go. If we hit start, here at the top of our member server, we now have Notepad++. All right. Now, this software will never be installed on our domain controllers because the GPO is not linked to the domain controller's organizational unit. And if you look in Active Directory, the domain controller's OU is above, it's hierarchically above the domain computer's OU, right? Does that make sense? So group policy objects flow down. So if we applied it to Server Academy, it would apply to every organizational unit underneath Server Academy, and therefore every computer account underneath Server Academy. If we applied it to the root of the domain, well, then it would affect everything in here, including domain controllers. But since we linked it to domain computers, it's only going to affect every user or every account within that OU and any sub OUs. So if we created a new organizational unit under domain computers, like, let's see, I don't know, member servers or workstations, for example. And inside of workstations, we drag SAWS01, which is my Windows 10 computer. This GPO, let me refresh this over here. Hit the refresh button. Server Academy, domain computers, refresh. I'll reload the console. Let's see here. Tools, group policy, management. Workstations. So this GPO is also going to affect workstations, okay? Because it's linked, the GPO is linked to the OU above that. So always flows down, okay? Right, and that was in US dollars. Someone's bringing that up. I don't know what it is in euros, but yes, it is a silent install. And I'm just looking at the other questions we got here. Yeah, so Oritz is asking if there's a score. We can add a scoring ability, and that's something that we will be bringing to the platform. So he's saying, you know, he would run through the labs and he thinks he did it right, but he wasn't entirely sure. That is spot on, and we're going to be adding a scoring system. So at the end of the lab, you're going to actually find out if you passed or failed. However, you know, that's an in-depth process. So it's in progress, but it's not going to become like next week or anything like that. So we're definitely working on that. But it might take a little while. Okay, so someone's asking how you uninstall it. Get to that really quick. Okay, so if we go here and we right click and we say edit, and we go to policy software, we right click on this and we say remove. We will choose immediately uninstall the software from users and computers, or we can say allow them to continue using it. If you want to uninstall Notepad++, you would check this checkbox and you would hit OK. So that would be how you would do that. But I'm just going to leave it there. All right, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to deploy a desktop background. And I'm going to do this wrong the first time. And I want to see if you guys can point it out in the comments what I'm doing wrong. So we'll see if you guys can catch me. Yeah, if your replication is broken, you've got big problems, man. Rudy is saying the cause of GPUs not replicating on second server. That could be a lot of issues. It could be network connectivity. Yeah, you need to, man, that's really in depth. That's not something I can just like answer. You need to figure out, are your DCs connected? Is there latency between them? Are they in different sites? Are they in different zones? Are they connected through VPN, or are they just like on the same lab network? But yeah, replication is a big pain to work through. But yeah, it's definitely too in depth for me to just answer based off of that, comment. And really, it's one of those things that you just have to like start troubleshooting. It's not something that I can just be like, oh, you're not replicating, oh, you need to do this or do that. It's like you have to start checking all the boxes and making sure that you have connectivity, that your sysvol is healthy and things like that. And then you can figure out, what's going on. It could be permissions issues. So that's an in-depth and very challenging problem that you have to deal with. Okay. All right. So let's see here. So, all right, we're going to create a desktop wallpaper, right? So what I want to do is we're going to do this on a user basis. We've already configured a GPO for our computers, but now let's create a GPO that affects user settings. So here we have my user account, Paul Hill. And I think I'm logged in as Paul Hill on this computer. So if I right click on the Windows 10 workstation, I say Task Manager. If I go under More Details and I select Users, I can see I'm logged in as Paul Hill. Okay. So I want to assign a desktop background for all my users that are in the domain users OU. This is a common thing at your office. They might want to have their company logo, for all the computer backgrounds. So what we're going to do is go to Group Policy. We've identified the OU that we want to place the setting under. And actually, let's do it like this. We want to apply it to the domain computers. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say create a GPO in this domain. And we're going to call it Desktop Wallpapers. All right, and we'll not wallpapers with an S. This should be wallpaper. And let's right click and edit this GPO. And we're going to go under user configuration or user configuration, administrative templates, desktop, and desktop. And it's a miracle that I remembered that path because I always forget them. All right, we're going to right click desktop wallpaper and we're going to say edit. And we're going to enable this path. All right. So we need to type in the path. We don't want to use a local path. We want to use a server UNC path. So if we go back to the share, we just need to we're going to use this one, server academy desktop.png. It's like this logo. We're just going to drag this under share. And now if we go to / sadco1, oops, there we go. And we go to share, we can copy this path. I'm a big fan of copy and paste. I never type stuff in just because it's too much chance for error. I'm going to select the file here. Oops. And I'm going to hit F2, Control A, and Control C. Those are my shortcut secrets, man. That's how you quickly copy something. Select the file, F2, Control A, Control C, and you've copied the name. Now I'm going to go here and hit Control V, and we've pasted the file share or the full path inside the file share for the desktop background. So now if I hit apply, we've configured the desktop wallpaper and it should work, right? But I've done something critically wrong. So if you guys know what it is, point it out in the chat. I'm going to go to the Windows 10 workstation and I'm going to run a GP update and we'll see why, or if it does work or if it doesn't. And this is also going to get us into group policy troubleshooting. So I'm going to say GP update / force. All right, come on guys, give me your best guess. All right, computer policy is updated. And the user policy is updated. But we didn't get any setting about the background. But if we sign out, sometimes you have to sign out for the background to apply. Usually you do. So we'll sign out and sign back in. So someone asked, did I forget to enforce the GPO? No, I did not forget to enforce the GPO. And that's great that you brought that up because I haven't talked about enforcing GPOs. Enforcing a GPO means it will take precedence over other GPOs. It also means it'll affect Active Directory objects that are within a non-inheriting OU. Wow, that really just kind of That's way too much for what we have time for today. But you enforce the GPO by right-clicking and say enforced. Oh, I guess my domain controller decided to reboot. Nice. So there's that. So I have to start this thing back up. So if this ever happens in the labs, which you probably will be turning off and on the VMs all the time, we're going to hit power. And I'm just going to say really quick, we're going to say power, turn off machine, blah, 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 hit OK. And then I'm just going to hit start. Okay. Then we'll go back to full screen mode. And this is what I was talking about. Like right now, the operating system is booting, but we still have connectivity to it. Super cool. Oh, right. So Luke is talking about place a $sign behind the share name and then it's hidden. That is a great tip. Awesome, Luke. That's right. That way, if you don't want like anyone to be able to just browse to the server and access it, it's not visible. That's a great tip. So Herm said wrong backslash. We'll take a look at that when the server comes back online. Oh yeah, and by the way, logging back in, still no desktop background, so still not working. Someone's saying ping the server. How do I get rid of a virus? It's bad. It slows my computer down. Man, dude, do you have antivirus? You may end up just having to wipe your computer and install a new operating system. Might be the best way to do that, unless it's infected your network. But you definitely got to identify what kind of virus it is. You need antivirus. Yeah, so everyone can install software, right? But the thing is Luke, the software that we were trying to publish, Notepad++, was not necessarily confidential. So that's why I don't generally take that into consideration. But like you were saying, you know, it's probably a best practice just to not make that stuff available to everyone. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe you want to have a software folder where if people decide they need Notepad++, they can download it from you instead of going to the internet and maybe getting it from a site that has a virus. All right. So someone's asking, what RDP tool are you using? This is the Server Academy IT Labs. So when you're a member of Server Academy, you have the labs page, and we're using the group policy. Oh yeah, this one, manage your workstations with group policy. So you click that button, this tab opens up, and then let me hide this bookmark bar so you guys can see better. Then you have access to all the labs. This is the RDP tool I'm using. So it's serveracademy.com. All right. So someone said try pasting the SADC. So basically the full path to the file inside your web browser. That's a great idea. So let's do that. So we're going to go here. We're going to hit escape. / SADC01 / share. And then we got to find the file name. Let's see. Go to D, share. This is the, oh, I probably can't copy and paste. So server academy desktop.png. Server academy desktop.png. Press enter. And it loads. So we know we have access to it. That's a great troubleshooting step. All right, here's what we're going to do to start troubleshooting. I'm going to hit CMD. And I'm going to say, I'm going to start command prompt. Correct. Yeah, Luke is saying for licenses, you need to have that managed. That's correct. Yeah, so that's right. When you're considering licensing and things like that, you probably do want to restrict who can install it and who can't. That way you don't have a sudden spike. All right, let's run gp-result /r. This is a tool that you're going to be using a lot to figure out if group policy objects are applied to your computer, and if so, what settings are applying. So if we go under user settings here, and you remember in the group policy object, we configured it under user settings, right? Applied group policy objects is NA, non-applicable. And that's a problem because the GPO is not being applied. So if we go back to the domain controller, and let me open group policy. Whoa, it's 5:50 already? Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Time is flying. Wow. Okay. Okay, so if I go to Server Academy, Domain Computers, we have the desktop wallpaper here. And if I hit Edit, under User Configuration, if we go to administrative desktop, we configured the setting right here. So it's configured under user configuration and it's linked to domain computers. So under SAWS01, the GPO is not being applied. The reason, all right, I'm about to give it away. Okay, so someone said run GP result /R. Great. That is another great tool. GP result. Oh no, we already did that. I thought they said, I was thinking RSOP. We're gonna run a tool called rsop.msc. And this will tell us what settings are being applied. Oh, so I gotta run this as, okay, yeah. So it's not able to do it for the computer. That's fine because we're looking for user settings. All right, so if we go into here, under Windows settings, we don't even have administrative templates here. That's because there's no settings being applied. All right, so here we go. Time to talk about what is going on here. We've used, oh, by the way, we used a couple tools. We used rsop.msc. That's a tool that you have to use when you're troubleshooting group policy. And we used GP result /R. And what we found is that the settings aren't being applied at all. That tells me that the GPO is either linked in the wrong spot or the link isn't enabled or something's going on with the link. So if we go to SADC01, we have the GPO linked under domain computers. If I open Active Directory, users and computers, this is how you troubleshoot this, by the way, when the GPO is not being applied. We're going to go and look under serveracademy.local, server academy, and let's expand domain computers. Inside domain computers, I have SAMS01 and SAWS01. The problem is, and I'm going to look, we are using Hyper-V for these VMs, but you can use ESXi also. I think we use VMware ESXi for our CentOS 7 virtual machines. Okay, the problem is we've configured user settings, but linked the GPO to an OU that only contains computer accounts. So if you remember in that slideshow, if we're going to configure user settings, we have to apply the GPO to an OU that has user accounts. All right, so it's just a simple issue of linking it in the wrong spot. So what we're going to do is delete this link, and we're going to move this link over to the domain users. So if I right click, link an existing GPO, and we'll say desktop wallpaper. So now we're linking this GPO, which if I edit it, it has the user configuration set up. So user configuration, desktop, and we have desktop wallpaper. Now it's linked to an OU with domain users. And if I go to domain users, paul.hill is inside of that, which is the user account that I'm logged in here. So what we're going to do is run GP update /force. So it'll go out and grab that new policy that we just configured. Saren is asking, please upload this video. I always do. And if you're a member of Server Academy, you'll be able to access it under the live room, which I showed you guys earlier. And I'll also upload it to YouTube. So if you're not subscribed, first of all, make sure you subscribe. That helps me out a lot. But oops. Oh, hold on a second. I just made a big mistake. Hang on a second. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, 1 second, guys. Logitech, let's see. All right, so okay, let's see. Let's see if I can turn on my video. Okay, we might have to do this. Please. So I just had a technical glitch. I clicked the wrong button. Oh, so that's funny. All right, let me see here. And then, okay, here we go. Okay, cool. So I have to move some people over because I clicked too many buttons too fast and I accidentally broke something on the other platform. So I'm probably not going to be able to fix that live. So yeah, so there we go. All right, cool. So now we've updated the group policy object. If we run GP result /R now, under applied group policy objects, we now see desktop wallpaper. Okay, so one of the main things you guys have to take away from this live stream is GP result /R and RSOP, rsop.msc. So if I think I can type that here, maybe not. Yeah, if I type rsop.msc here and I press enter. Okay, hopefully you guys. Oh man, Ahmed is saying it, or I'm hoping I'm saying your name right. It's 2 a.m. That's crazy. Hopefully everyone made it over. Oh man, I can't believe that's so terrible. That's such a bummer because that's gonna mess up the live stream recording. Oh well. Live and you learn. But if we go under RSOP, we have administrative templates, desktop, and here we have the desktop wallpaper setting, which is enabled. And if we look here, we can see that setting is configured, but it's still not showing up yet. If I hit close, let me not save that. I don't need to save that. We'll say no. What I need to do is log off and log back on. So I'm going to hit the Windows key and hit sign out. Okay, I think I got this other platform back. So I was just, let me see if I can screen share really quick. All right, there we go. I was clicking way too fast, guys, but it's back. So hopefully you guys can see now. All right, so I just ran a GP update on my Windows 10 computer, and I'm logging out and logging back in. So if I press the go button here. Hey, Kojo, how's it going, buddy? Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Now I have the desktop background that's applied to this computer, okay? So again, this is only going to apply to my paul.hill user account. So if I log in to another server using a different user account like administrator, if I log in, it's not going to change the desktop background. Okay, but if I was to log into this server, I'm not sure if I'd have to run a GP update first. I don't think I would, but let's try it. Because it should run the policy. I also don't know if my user account has permissions to log into this account or this server. But let's see here what happens. Let's hit go. Applying user settings. That should mean it's grabbing the desktop wallpaper. Yeah, so I logged in as paul.hill. I get the server academy desktop background. If I sign out, and by the way, that's an old logo. Probably nobody cares. But if I sign out and sign back in with my administrator user account, and type in the password and hit go, it's just going to show me the regular desktop background. Okay, and that's because on the domain controller, only paul.hill is inside of this organizational unit where I applied the desktop wallpaper. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you're finding this interesting. This was in pretty high demand, so I wanted to make sure that I brought this to you guys. All right, so what we've done is we've created group policy objects. We've talked about GPOs, GPO links. We deployed some software. We deployed a desktop background, and we did some troubleshooting, right? There's a lot more settings in here. If you go under group policy, the group policy editor, you can do all these crazy settings. I mean, there's a lot of settings that you can do. You can do Windows settings, security settings. If we go under computer configuration, a big one in here that you guys will probably need to understand or at least work with at some point is local policies, security options. You can do things like user right assignment. So you can say deny logon through remote desktop services. So you can define what users you want to log in and which ones you don't want to be able to log in. Deny logon as a service. And then we have account policies. We have the password policy. You can define, if you want to have password history, which means if a user changes their password, you can make sure that it's not the same password they've already used before and things like that. Also, password complexity, how long the password should be. You could say if you wanted to be ridiculous, 120. Oh, it doesn't let you do 120 characters. I guess 14 is the max. But yeah, so all these settings are configurable through group policy. You can change the registry. You can change Windows firewall. You can configure Windows services, whether they should start or stop. There's a lot of things you can do with group policy. And with the power of group policy objects, you can really do it at scale. You can affect every computer inside of your domain. That could be thousands or tens of thousands of computers with a single group policy object. So group policy, definitely a must-have skill, if you're trying to work in the IT field. Now, for those of you who are not members, I want to show you what we have for group policy as far as training. Yes, I am recording these sessions, and yes, they will be uploaded. If you go to serveracademy.com/GPO live, I'm going to put this in here. GPO live. If you go to that link, you guys can sign up for a free trial and get access to everything that we have. That's the labs that I've been using, and the courses. So we have an Active Directory, entire module dedicated to just Active Directory, how to install it, how to configure it, set it up, and how to administrate it. And then we have a group policy administration module, which is like what we did today, but a lot more in depth. So then there's other ones in here. You guys can see that on the website. And we have our curriculum that everything that we cover in here, you guys can like jump to a specific module, like for Active Directory, installing ADDS server role, and it just goes on. So if you guys are interested, go to the link that I just posted on YouTube, and you guys can get access for the free trial. Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out. I hope you guys enjoyed this training. Again, please give us a try at serveracademy.com/GPO live. And I look forward to seeing you guys over at the platform. And if not, then I'll see you guys at the next live stream. Okay.